Hey there, listeners. Well, I had an awesome interview with a guy called Daniel Beatty. Well, I call him Dan, and I've had a bit of time with Dan over the years. And Dan has got a huge and rich background in the corporate world, but now in his own business as well. And we talked about that a leader that in an organization, that there is strength in having diversity and in different cultures. But he also talked about a leader going into an organization. You need to go in humble and you need to go in as a listener. The other thing we talked about was that the ability to actually stand by your convictions, and leaders who are adapting and changing are winning. So we talked about the ability to decode cultures. Fantastic conversation, a great guy. So listeners, it's your turn now to sit back and enjoy the interview.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us. I've got a great guest. His name is Daniel Beatty. Dan, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for having me on here. It's great to actually be here. Normally, I listen to you on my morning runs in Singapore when I'm covered in sweat and gasping for air. So this is honestly, it feels better.
Cool. So don't sweat and don't gasp for air right now. Just relax. We're going to be all good. We're going to have some fun here. And so, Dan, I just want to know, whereabouts in the world are you today?
I'm joining you from Cape Town. So we're in autumn in Cape Town. I've had a surf this morning. There was a pod of dolphins in the bay. So couldn't be in a better place, to be honest, Dennis.
So you've had a surf. So I see in your bio that you're actually really into surfing. In fact, at the very young age, you actually were sponsored as a sponsored surfer, but also you've actually represented two countries, Canada and South Africa, in surfing. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, so I've been a surfer almost my whole life. I grew up on the beach down in Cape Town. And that's one of the key catalysts actually on my journey of life was everything that I learned as a kid coming up through surfing, also being 12 years old, negotiating my own sponsorship contract, being put onto a bus by my folks to go and compete all around South Africa, disappearing for 2 weeks with 50 rands in my pocket, learning to adapt, decode cultures, I think all over the country, but most importantly, also figuring out how to pitch up and perform when you need to as a surfer. You get 20 minutes in a heat and you've got to be on absolute fire during those 20 minutes. And that's something I brought over into my corporate life the whole way through.
Yeah, so when you're on stage, it's showtime. It's time for you to get going. And so, yeah, bringing it into that corporate world is really interesting. The thing I was thinking about just here is that, well, listeners, you can't see Dan. So he hasn't got long hair like a surfer and things like that, very much corporate look. And for those of you on social media, you'll be able to actually see a photo of Dan as well. Dan, I've given a brief introduction to the audience about you, but you started your own marketing agency in your own business, and then you went into the corporate world and you went into Red Bull, I think, from that. Tell us more about you. Tell us more about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Denis. I think the elevator pitch is that I've been a people leader for around 25 years. 20 years of my career was spent over in Asia. I've launched brands in the US, in the UK, across Southeast Asia, in Africa. And then obviously one of the highlights was launching Red Bull in China with Mr. Mateschitz. It was a project where I worked directly with him. But those who know me, I'm a little bit more interesting in coffee shop than elevators. So I'll give you the longer version. So I was born in Cape Town. My mum's Canadian. My dad's South African. So I went to school between Halifax and Canada and also in Cape Town. Those were the bad old days of apartheid in South Africa. So going over to Canada for school, it was incredibly diverse, in school with kids of all different nationalities. Coming back to South Africa, we were all white on amazing school grounds. But also as a kid, you didn't quite acknowledge that whole element of apartheid. It was in the background. My mum was a protester against it. She was in an organization called the Black Sash. So we knew it was bad, but we didn't really know what we were part of. And then in grade 8, all of a sudden, we came into school and the whole class was diverse. There were all these kids who lived 10, 20 minutes from my house that we'd never seen before. We looked at this as kids and we were like, well, where have you guys been? And they were like, well, we weren't allowed to come to the school. And after that, honestly, our soccer matches got much better. It was an amazing learning of culture. And I think that was one of the catalysts that's helped to create me. The other one we were talking about was the surfing bit, which taught me performance management, humility, and tenacity in a huge way. I started working in advertising. I hated it. I didn't like being in that kind of culture. It wasn't right for me. So I left after 18 months and we set up a youth marketing consultancy. It was called Instant Grass. It was based out of Cape Town with 2 partners. And at that time, South Africa was transforming. So you had this vibrant new youth culture coming up. This is kind of 2003, but the boardroom wasn't transforming. So you had a lot of old leaders sitting in the boardroom. And so we set up the business to teach and educate the boardroom on what the cool kids were doing. It was very successful. And all of a sudden, I was leading focus groups in Soweto, drinking beers in Khayelitsha and braaiing on Sundays in these townships. And I'm a kid from a surf town south of Cape Town. And the lesson I took from that was that you just get such strengths in diversity and diverse cultures. And then I think other interesting kind of catalyst for us is that in 2007, my wife and I moved to Tokyo, Instant Grass, which was our agency. We'd set up offices in Lagos and Nairobi and Moscow. So we'd done really, really well out of Cape Town, had an office in Joburg. And then the British American Tobacco asked us to open up in Japan. We moved over there pre-smartphone. So this whole career piece that I'm going into now, this is all before phone. And parachuting into Tokyo, Japan, before smartphones, neither of us spoke any Japanese. And having to basically learn to decode and thrive in what is one of the most foreign cultures and one of the strongest cultures on earth, that developed this ability to decode cultures. We love Japan. I moved over to Red Bull based out of Hong Kong. I launched many markets, as I said, in Southeast Asia, etc. I became the area marketing director for Red Bull. And then most recently was working with Glanbia, who are an Irish wellness company based out of Singapore. And then towards the end of the last year, I took the decision to make a jump and see what I could do to bring all my skills to support the startup and entrepreneurial world, which is where I'm working at the moment.
Excellent. Wow. So for me, what I'm hearing here is that you've got a wealth of knowledge in actually helping businesses launch into a new country across different cultures, but also being able to scale those businesses is something that's very important. And I love what you said before about, well, first of all, pre-smartphone days. Wow, that was pretty interesting. And then the other one is around your ability to decode cultures. And I think that's really important, even with smartphones today. I think that there are cultures in front of you. There's 2 different ways we can talk about cultures. One is ethnic cultures. There's one way. 2 is the culture and the way we do business. And the third way, actually, is the third way, which is the culture of an organization or within an organization too. And if you can decode all of those, then that's the key of actually succeeding, or part of the success as well. What were 1 or 2 things that you found that when you're looking at decoding those kind of cultures and working with different cultures, leadership, was it different in every country and every culture, or was it the same?
Good question, Dennis. I think it's the businesses that I've led, China, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, across Asia, each culture I've always treated as unique. So when you're working in Korea, you're not going to work the same way that you are when you're working in China or the US. And I think the key to it, and what I figured out very early on, is to go in humble and go in as a listener. We often have a brief as leaders, things that we need to achieve when we arrive in a market, things we want that market to deliver. We're never going to get that right unless the market is empowered and we're working in that local way in those markets. And I think that's something that I think is so important. And as we go forward, it's vital that people actually just start listening to each other. We're getting more and more siloed in today's world, and we're not listening to the other side. And I think that's also coming a little bit into corporate, where people are saying, oh, well, that's Asia, that's one country. Well, that's Africa, that's one country. It should be easy. That's not one country. It's a conglomeration of multiple countries, hundreds of languages, thousands of families, et cetera, et cetera. So that listening, I think, is the most important, and being humble in your approach.
Very good. And I think that's not just going to other countries. I think a leader taking over a new team, or a leader going into a new business and coming in, the CEO or a C-suite person, they should also go in as humble and also be that listener for the period of time, 3 months, 30 days, whatever it's going to take, to start listening to what's going on and then make up your own decision or make your own sort of perceptions and opinions. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get told about a leader or an organization before I get there. So I'd listen to what they're saying. And then when I get there, then I find out more and listen again. And then I make my own decision up about what's actually going on in this organization. Have you found that as well, rather than just ethnic cultures or countries, the same thing into different organizations as well?
Absolutely. When I moved from Hong Kong down to Singapore to take over the reins for Glanbia, which is a nutrition company based out of Singapore, I was leading their Asia business. We were still in COVID, and there was a big gap in the leadership. The previous leader had left the business. I didn't receive a handover. And that for me was, instead of coming in and saying, right, we're going to be amazing guys, let's go. This is post-COVID. We're going to smash it. I took the approach of sitting back and saying to the team, what's going on here? And bringing everyone in and sitting down with the individual groups and individuals to listen to them about the status of the business. And I think that was one of my most valuable periods there, both for my own intelligence and learning about the business, but then also for the employees. And I think looking forward with employees, there's a need to be heard and a desire for leaders to engage in dialogue. So not only do we need to listen as leaders, but I think teams want to be listened to more and more.
Dan, you've gone from the corporate world out into your own business again and helping other businesses launch and so forth. If you were to redo that all again, what would be one or two lessons that you've learned over the sort of last few months in doing that? What would you say to people? Because there's a lot of listeners here who are probably sitting in their roles today, either bored or they're wanting to go and do something else, but there's that fear of going what I call crossing over to the other side and doing what they wanted to do. Any things, one or two things you might want to say to them if they're thinking about going and starting their own business, what they should be thinking about or putting in place based on what you just experienced?
Yeah, I think the most vital thing is having a network up and running and really surrounding yourself with positive influences. We forget about that sometimes when we're deep in corporate, just how networked we are working in multinationals. And when you step out and you're by yourself, you're suddenly looking around going, where's my network? Where's my structure? So I think that network piece is vital. I think the second piece underneath it is to don't go completely from a structured workplace to a totally unstructured workplace. So still make sure that you do maintain some sort of structure in what you're doing and work habits. I think there is, I don't want to get too hippie on you. The dolphins weren't talking to me this morning when I was surfing, but there's that part of also trusting the process. Everybody knows somebody. The more people you're meeting, the more people you're going to get introduced to, the more you're going to grow and develop your business. And there's that ability of just sitting back and going, right, I'm actually being led somewhere on this path. Trust the process as I go. So you're going to have setbacks. You don't have a boss that you can go and knock on the door and talk to, but you've got to coach yourself through that. And oftentimes what would the boss say? Basically take your learnings, trust the process. This is going in the right direction. So that would be my third piece of advice.
Yeah, all of that is great and what you just shared there. And I think trusting the process is a big one. And when you're in the midst of it, it's not that easy. But you know what? Trust the process. It'll come. It will work through. But I always find that the structured and unstructured, what you talked about, spot on. That is because all of a sudden you've got all these emails and meetings and so forth and you leave and you go and start your own business, but then it's just you. And then, or maybe you have a group of people, maybe you've bought an organization. There's all different things you can look at. But having that structure, even when you have that unstructure. So I think it's very important for a lot of people to know and also make sure they do that and do it well.
And I think adding to that, Dennis, the amount of time my wife and kids have said, stop managing us. We don't work for you. It's important that you have your family support as well. But as a leader, you come out of a business, you're making thousands of decisions a day, completely decision fatigue. Most of us in the corporate workspace are functionally burning out, to be honest. And there's this huge evolution that you go to when you're working by yourself and for yourself. You get your energy back, you get your fitness, you get time. You don't get the other rewards. It's not yet, at least. I'm early days in this process. But having family support and having the backing of the family is key.
Very good. Yeah, and I think the fitness is the big one too, right? So that's why the surfing is going to be important for you and for anyone else and whatever other activity they do, just to build that fitness if you're in a corporate world today, or if you're in any other leadership role today, that fitness is going to be very important for us to talk about for sure. Now, Dan, you and I have been talking about leadership already. We've been straight into it. How did you actually get into leadership yourself?
Dennis, before I jump onto that, just one more point on your previous topic, which was that fitness is the current frontier. The next one's going to be your gut microbiome. And you can already see that coming through in wellness and all of the new beverages and foodstuffs, etc. But having a healthy system is going to be vital for leaders going forward. The gut is responsible for dopamine, serotonin, immunity, etc. So what you're putting into the system, that's going to be coming through more and more in terms of leadership nutrition to go alongside the fitness piece, to obviously to go alongside the mental health piece.
And just before you go there, I think the thing here is that this podcast, we talk about executive excellence and well-being, right? So the well-being is a very important one. And you can't do the other stuff very well unless that well-being is there. And as you said, it's not just the physical, it's the mental, it's the emotional, but it's the gut as well. It's everything we go through, which is brilliant. So how did you get into leadership?
I think leadership, honestly, Dennis, got into me first and foremost. I was asked to captain the rugby team when I was 8 years old. And from there, developed my own style, both through where I was, the journey of life, and also through my career. I've always been the same person inside, but that university of life, the surfing piece, the working abroad, these different cultures have all brought different modules into my leadership style. So I learned about karma in Indonesia, which is essentially what comes around goes around. Do good, have good intentions, and it will come back to you. Ikigai in Japan, connecting purpose into what you're doing and how you live your life. Focus and structure in India, when I was working with Red Bull there, and they started the Mumbai subway with a massive overhead train rail, which didn't make any sense to me. But that's just, you have to have structure in an organization that big, or that you have in India. You have to be able to focus in as well in a market like that. In Australia, I learned about the necessity of fitness, working down in the offices in Sydney, seeing how early everyone woke up and how they were all out on the beach every day and getting fit. In Joburg, I learned about the necessity for equality in the workplace, flatter hierarchies, not necessarily having one boss at the top. We all need to feel like we're pulling our weight. And I've also, on top of that, I've established a really good network of mentors around me and people who are just inspiring people. So yesterday I was chatting to a CEO of an American ad agency who's been in my network since we lived in Shanghai together. And she is just fascinating. Every time I talk to her, I'm just inspired and motivated to go further. And I've got similar people from different businesses, different categories who I connect in with. And it's literally, how are you, is the conversation. But I leave with, wow, I need to get off my butt. There's so much going out there in the world that I can go and do too.
Listeners, that's really important what Dan's just shared, right? The importance of actually having the right people around you. So make sure you've got people who will be there to support you as either mentors, as a support crew, but people that inspire you, people who are going to actually help lift you and take you to another level. Very important that you do it. And as Dan said earlier on, it's about building that network around you. And I'm going to add the words now. You need to do it now. Build it before you need it. And it's very important that we do that. Dan, this person could be alive or from history. Now, this person, who is your favorite leader and why?
Denis, this is a controversial one, and I understand that you're sitting in New Zealand, and for every All Black supporter, they probably want to block their ears.
Oh, I was waiting for you to get to it, but at least you finally got to it.
So for me, it's hands down the South African rugby coach, Rassie Erasmus. And I think like New Zealand, just to give a bit of background, South Africa, rugby the word religion is contentious, but it's Saturday mornings for every school kid. It's Saturday afternoons for every adult. And the kind of, even the currency depends on the performance of the national rugby team in South Africa. And until about 2018, until Rassie came in, that sentiment was held by about 5% of the population in this country. And what he's managed to do as a leader is, the first thing he did is he took the politics out of the sport. So he transformed the team culture. It brought in diversity. The team suddenly represented the country. They looked like the country. And from there, he just delivered on performance metrics. So he's smashed all the performance metrics. He's innovated ahead of the game to keep on winning. He takes the heat for the team. So he's always the one that you hear about in the spotlight, etc. No one's ever shouting directly at the team members if you follow South African rugby. And he focused them on a higher purpose, which was what they could do for the country. And through doing that, he's honestly helped to transform the nation. And we saw that after the 2023 World Cup when South Africa won it in Paris, and they came back and they did a victory parade in 19 and 23 when they won these World Cups. In 19, it was fantastic. It was in the urban centers. A lot of people turned out. In 2023, it was in every township in this country. And suddenly rugby is a pathway out of poverty. And Rassie Erasmus, through his leadership, has been able to give the vision through the team members he has to who he's been talking about. And it's every South African sport now, because it's changing people's lives.
And I love it because the story is so strong, and he has done wonders for the organization, for the country, for the sport, but also for high performance.
Yeah.
To see somebody come in and do some great things with that rugby team, wonderful, and what they've done, because there's talent within that team already, but he's taken that talent to another level. It's actually like he's opened up and he's allowed them to fly even more by creating that environment and doing what he's doing. And I really like what you're saying about rugby is helping people play to get out of poverty, right? It's an awesome thing. When you see a country whereby the kids are either playing soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, rugby in the streets, that's when you start to see a country start to grow and start to move on. And it's a wonderful thing to see. And yeah, it did hurt me to see that we didn't do too well. But you know what? I love seeing that high performance in any country, in any sports, and anything like that start to unfold. And it's just a wonderful thing to see. And I don't know whether you heard this on the news the last couple of days, but the 14-year-old who played cricket, 100 runs, and a 14-year-old playing at that top level game, unbelievable in what that kid is doing. And so, you know, who's the people behind the kid? It's also, I don't know about you, but when I see friends of ours whose kids have actually graduated in university or college, whatever you want to call it, I don't just say to the kid, hey, congratulations. I also say, hey, mum and dad, parents, well done on what you did, because they've done heaps to support that person through their actually succeeding and doing what they've done.
So true. And I think that's first, a contrast in South Africa is there's that famous story from the Japan World Cup where Mpimpi, who was the first Black African to score a try in the World Cup final, he didn't have any names to put in the numbers on the back of his shirt, because this is a man who comes from no family. And this is what you're dealing with in a country like South Africa. And I think, to your point, Denis, which is an excellent one, if you look at what's happening in India, where kids play cricket in the streets, you've got similar levels of social aspiration, similar levels of development that need to happen, economic growth, etc. Cricket is the vehicle. You've got the IPL, which is the most moneyed league in the world. The Indian Cricket Association are the biggest and most powerful. And they've built this culture of excellence in India, which didn't exist, honestly, 15 years ago. And I don't know who did it, but it's a similar example. That's why I aspire to what a guy like Rassie Erasmus has done. And importantly, in the most traditional of environments, these sports are everyone's a stakeholder nationally, and they're hyper traditional in terms of their leadership. So to be an innovator is very difficult.
Yeah. Have you actually met the Springboks coach?
No, I've not met him. But when I do, I'm going to
here's the
shake his
question.
hand and say, Denis says hi.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be good. And the thing I was going to ask you was, here's a question that you don't know that I'm going to ask you, and that is, if you two were actually on a park bench having a coffee, what would be one question you would love to ask him?
Firstly, I would say thank you for everything that he's done. I think the question that I would ask him is, how did he find the strength to stand by his convictions when the whole world was against him? And at times, we're digressing into a rugby podcast, but the Lions tour in South Africa was very, very controversial. The whole world was against him, but he stood firm as a leader and he dug so deep. And I think it would be that question of, when the chips were so down for you, where did you find that strength?
Great question. Well, that's a goal for you. You're going to have to go and meet him and have a coffee with him and ask that question. Yeah. Now, the title of the show is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title, that statement, what does it mean for Dan?
I think the world, it goes beyond a little bit from leadership in my mind. I think the world is changing. I think we're at a bit of an inflection point, to be honest, politically, economically, and technologically. And so leadership is changing, but I think the challenge is that a lot of leaders aren't. Commerce is changing, but a lot of commercial models are not changing. workers are changing, but workplaces are almost reverting, that they're not changing. And so I think there's this real tension between the old and the new right now. And this is what it means to me, where history tells us that the new always wins at the end of the day. You go through these periods of incredible tension, and then you go into a cycle of the new, the reinvention. And to my own personal experience, I think we're seeing conservative corporate strategies coming in to manage global uncertainty right now. So it's a Trump world. Tariffs are flying everywhere. Companies are pulling back. They're saving on OPEX. They're reducing their exposure to foreign markets, and they're really bringing it into slowing innovation, focusing on the core, stabilizing supply chains, etc. But on the other hand, and this is where I'm working at the moment, is that the startup world is thriving. What we're seeing is that founders are collaborating. Tech is enabling lighter capital, so you don't need tons of money to go out on your own and do your own thing. And there's this huge fragmentation of offerings across categories. So from tech to beverage to food to sports nutrition, which is where I was, you're getting local players launching their own thing, doing amazing brands because of social media. And this hyper-localization is happening, and almost a democratization of commerce. So workers are expecting so much more of leaders in the workplace, because leaders have to justify to workers, right? The workers are sitting back and going, I could start my own business tomorrow. I could be a social influencer. Why am I in this workplace? You need to explain it to me and justify it to me.
Do you know, just a couple of months ago, I was working with an organization. They asked me whether I wanted to start my own vitamin brand. And I'm like, what? And they go, well, you got this podcast, Leadership is Changing, and you're working with leaders and things like that. What about starting your own vitamin brand? I'm like, never thought about it. And it's going to what you're just saying about a lot of new startups, a lot of new things that we can do, which is interesting to see. How you just talked before about the technology seems to be driving a lot. I actually think life is getting faster all the time, and we are in this fast-paced changing world. Is there anything that you think that leaders need to be mindful of today and helping them be successful in today's fast-paced, ever-changing world?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, Dennis. I think that leaders who are adapting to and leading change, they're the ones who are winning. And so I think the skill set has to include agility. You have to have a growth mindset. If you are saying the sky is falling every third minute, it's a tough old world for you to be a leader in at the moment. I think you need to have an ability to bring structure and cadence into what is quite a chaotic external environment, but that provides security for teams. Of course, the ability to articulate a clear vision and set an aspirational, purposeful North Star for the organization. Again, people are looking for meaning from every resource that we can, whether it's vitamin brands or denim brands or the workplace. And leaders have to be there for their teams. To the point of tech, I think you have to be on AI, you have to be on your socials, you have to understand all of the latest software, all of these things bubbling up. There's a great example. The advertising is about to be disrupted by the search engine, changing away from Google into AI search like Perplexity. Google's had a virtual monopoly on that for years and years and years. And now people are using AI to search, ChatGPT. So how are you feeding your search terms into those models? Because that's going to change the game for you. And I think leaders are going to have to be humble, because you're going to say one thing today and tomorrow it's not going to hold true anymore. So you have to be able to acknowledge it, put your hand up, say, look, guys, I made a bad call. And it's an impossible ask, because you also need to be brave and you have to have conviction in what you're saying. You really have to believe it, because you're going to have to make tough choices and stand by them. It's not a time to be a jellyfish.
Nice way of saying it, because in other words, listeners, don't sit around waiting. Do something about it, and don't be afraid of it. I know there's change and so forth, but around AI and so forth. But, as Dan says, just do it. Dan, do you reckon Google was asleep at the wheel with this? And now all of a sudden, I know they've got their own AI side of things as well, but these other search engines coming through are just going to take over big time.
I think that they're going to evolve the model, and it's all an evolution. I think Google's, as one organization that's never asleep at the wheel, they've been perfecting their Gemini models to come out really, really strong when they do. I just think what we're seeing is a bit of again, it's every industry. You've got this fragmentation, you've got new players coming in. The big giant at the top is no longer as stable and as in control as they once were. I think the way, Denis, that I think of it a lot is maybe 10 years ago or so, there was this craft beer explosion in breweries where every man and his dog suddenly was able to make a beer and build a cool brand. And suddenly the fridges were full of these different beers, IPAs, hazy PAs, all these things, porters, which we never encountered before. So I have to put my hand up and say I do drink beer. So I know the category. But then you had to, the big players, the ABIs, etc., had to adapt and they had to evolve. Some bought in craft beers. Some said, right, we're going to distribute other products through our network. That's actually what we're good at, not necessarily making beer. And I think that evolution is now proliferating across categories and sectors. Definitely in tech, it's definitely in consumer goods, it's definitely in fashion.
That's good. And I think the ability to adapt and change is what's going to help an organization survive. In fact, actually help them thrive as well, right? Because if they don't, then they're going to be either taken over or things aren't going to go well for them. And you and I have been talking about leadership. If we were to change lens now and think it from an employee's perspective, because you've had people reporting into you, people as well who are employees today that are reporting into a boss, has their expectations as an employee of leaders changed at all?
Yeah, I think again, zooming out and acknowledging the macro that we've all emerged from COVID into radical inflation, and now we're in a Trump cycle. So it's a backdrop of anxiety and uncertainty out there in planet Earth. And I think that then feeds into employees' expectations. So they're demanding leaders to give them purpose, to engage in dialogue, and to really listen with empathy so that they actually understand the issues underneath what's really going on in the business, underneath the hood. They want leaders to be people, not figureheads. The days of having the big boss fly in for the Formula One event and shake a few hands and say hi and be jet lagged are long gone. The leader needs to come in and actually get into the trade, actually walk the street, actually be in the office, be at the water cooler, be a person, because people want to work for people. We see it even in brands. People are buying into huge brands less and less. They're buying into people's brands. Look at Skims with Kim Kardashian, look at ON with Roger Federer, etc. We're buying people more than brands. So we want our leaders to be that. I think employees want to be empowered. They need good storytelling to keep them motivated and engaged. It's not necessarily you do X, you will get Y. It's much less transactional than it was. And for leaders, I think that means that leaders have to give time. And that's the most important thing. Employees want time from the leaders and they want the focus. So the days of sending mass emails across an organization, holding one town hall every quarter that goes out digitally for everyone to see, leaders actually need to get out there and they need to be on the ground and they need to be in the field.
Yeah, they need to walk the floor, right? They need to be out there touching the people, being around and so forth. That's very important to do. Yeah. And if you are a leader, then you can remember names or remember what people said to you, and then you bring that up again. It is so powerful because people go, you know me, or you remember my name, and it's very powerful.
Exactly. One interaction like that, Denis, honestly can buy a lifetime of passion and loyalty from someone in an organization. The fact that they were acknowledged, remembered, and it's small things. It's birthdays. It's also celebrating things that are important to people, whether that's Hari Raya or Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, or Easter, etc. It's important as leaders also to pay attention to the individuals in a diverse workplace.
Excellent. So if I was to get you to get your crystal ball out now and think about the future, where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
I think the crystal ball tells me that we're going to see a tough 5-year cycle. I think we'll see a lot of consolidation amongst the major players, increased local competition. I think deep, purposeful brands will be emerging, and that's where those will be delivering growth for shareholders. A lot of companies right now are delivering profit growth through OPEX cuts and that level of employee consolidation, etc. I think leaders will need to be brand architects. They'll have to be digital natives, master storytellers, and really able to hold those dialogues with employees. And the employee workplace is going to be diverse. It's going to be age diverse as well. So you have to be able to connect with someone from 16 to 60 years old. So it's going to require a lot from leaders. And I think the winners will really be the ones who listen the best.
When you say brand architects, tell us more about that.
So the powerful, deep brands that are currently emerging are being personality-led what we're going to see, I think, is businesses looking for these big brands to bet on. And the symptoms of that, you see Pepsi just bought Poppy, I think it is, in the US. It's either Olipop or Poppy, one of the two, for close to $2 billion US. Now, that's a brand that was created by startup founders. It's a power brand, and it's going to transform the Pepsi business. And it's a huge expenditure. They're going to invest to make it work globally. It's a new category for them. It's a modern soda. It's a probiotic soda. And that level of building that brand, acknowledging that what businesses need very, very strong consumer brands, is going to come back to the fore. I think we've been in a period of financially led businesses coming out of during COVID and coming out of COVID, a lot of operationally led business, supply chain, etc. But now we're going to enter into a cycle of real brand building.
Very exciting. Wow. Can't wait to see where it's going to go. Dan, I could sit here talking to you for hours. So if our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should they go?
Easy, Denis. And mate, back to you. I can always chat to you for ages. My LinkedIn is probably the best place, which is Daniel Beatty. And I don't have a website, but I do have LinkedIn. So find me there.
Excellent. Well, listeners, we'll put that into the show notes. Dan, once again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today.
Thanks so much, Denis. Really, really appreciate your time. And look forward to being back on air sometime soon.
Excellent. Well, there you go, listeners. Strengthen diversity and cultures. Remember to go in humble, but be a listener. Build the network around you. Go in with good intentions, but also make sure you surround yourself with strong mentors and inspiring people. Those leaders who are able to adapt, change, are the ones that are going to win. Hey, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.